The wedding industry in America is worth over $60 billion a year. There are nearly 2 million weddings every single year, and the average couple now spends around $30,000 just on the venue and the day. So you buy a beautiful barn, or an old estate, or a converted warehouse with string lights in the rafters. Couples pay you thousands of dollars to say "I do" under your roof. You book a wedding every Saturday, and the checks roll in. It sounds like the prettiest, safest money in the world. A business made of flowers and champagne and happy endings. It is not. Because a wedding venue does not really sell a building. It sells Saturdays, and there are only about 52 of them in a year, with maybe half of those falling in the good weather season couples actually want. That mortgage on the gorgeous property arrives all 52 weeks. Money only shows up on a handful of them. By the end of this video, you will know what a venue really costs, why so many of them, even the ones with every Saturday booked solid, are quietly bleeding money, and the one number that decides whether a wedding venue is a gold mine or a beautiful trap. The buy-in. Start with what you are actually buying, because it is far more than a pretty room. A wedding venue is a large physical property, and getting one runs anywhere from about $300,000 to over $1.5 million, all in. That could be a rustic barn on some acreage, a historic mansion, a vineyard, a lakefront lodge, or a modern event hall. You are buying or building the space, and then you are filling it. Tables, hundreds of chairs, linens, a sound system, lighting, climate control, a catering kitchen or prep area, a bridal suite, restrooms that can handle 200 guests at once, and a parking lot to match. Your biggest single costs are usually the property itself, the renovation to make it wedding ready, and the furniture and equipment to fill it. On top of that, you need a serious cash cushion, often several $100,000, to survive the slow first year while your calendar fills up. So the tiers look like this. A converted barn, charming and relatively affordable. An estate or a vineyard, expensive and photogenic and packed with pricing power. And the purpose-built event hall, designed from the ground up to move weddings through efficiently. Whatever you buy, hold this thought. You are not buying a wedding business. You are buying an expensive building and a calendar, and the calendar has very few good boxes on it. What you inherit. You inherit a beautiful building with the cost structure of a small hotel and the schedule of a farm stand. Start with the property. A mortgage or lease on a large venue can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, plus property taxes, plus insurance that has to cover crowds, alcohol, and dancing on your floors. That bill arrives every month, in January when nobody is getting married, exactly the same as in June. Then you inherit the seasons and the weekends. Weddings cluster on Saturdays, in a handful of good weather months. That is your prime inventory, and it is tiny. Fridays, Sundays, and the off-season are softer, cheaper, and harder to fill. You inherit the weather itself. An outdoor ceremony that gets rained out is a crisis, so you inherit tents, backup plans, and a lot of anxious phone calls. And you inherit the stakes. This is the most important day of someone's life, reviewed in public the next morning on the wedding sites. One ruined wedding, one bad review on the platforms couples trust, and your bookings can dry up. You are not just renting a room, you are guaranteeing a memory. The revenue layers. A wedding venue has several income streams, and the base rental is only the beginning. Layer 1. The rental fee. A couple pays to book the venue for their day, and depending on the location and the property, that can run from a few $1,000s to $25,000 and up for one event. This is the headline number, the one everybody sees. Layer 2. And this is the one that separates winners from the rest. Filling the empty days. Those scary weekday gaps and the off-season months are where struggling venues sit dark, and smart venues make their real money by booking birthday parties, bridal and baby showers, graduations, retirement parties, celebrations of life, and corporate events. One venue owner reported that well over half of all revenue came not from weddings at all, but from these smaller everyday events that fill the calendar Monday through Thursday. Layer 3. The high-margin add-ons. This is where the profit really lives. Bar and beverage packages, decor and furniture rentals, in-house catering or a cut of the caterer's bill, and upgrade packages. A couple already spending $30,000 will happily add a few thousand more for the bar and the pretty extras. Layer 4. Vendor money. Preferred vendor lists, where caterers, photographers, planners, and DJs pay to be recommended or send you a commission for the referral. Stack it together, and the truth appears. A wedding rental gets attention, but the everyday events and the add-ons are what actually keep the lights on. Listen to that again. Here is the part worth stopping on. A wedding venue can have every single Saturday of the year booked and still lose money. Sit with that. Every Saturday full, and the business is underwater. How is that possible? Because there are only about 52 Saturdays, and after you take out the cold months and the rainy ones, your most premium inventory might be 25 or 30 prime dates. That is the entire high-value stock this expensive building produces in a year. Meanwhile, the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the maintenance, and the staff run all 365 days, whether a wedding is happening or not. Listen to that again. You are not really selling a venue. You are selling a scarce handful of dates on a building that costs a fortune just to exist. Which means the winners are never the ones with the prettiest barn. They are the ones who charge enough for those precious Saturdays, and then fill every empty Tuesday and every dead January weekend with a birthday party or a corporate lunch. The Saturdays pay the mortgage. The weekdays are the profit, and the venues that only chase weddings are the ones quietly bleeding out. Deba. Turn the page to what leaves the account, and notice how much of it never stops. Property comes first. A mortgage or lease on a large venue, running into hundreds of thousands a year, plus property taxes on a valuable piece of real estate. This is the giant fixed cost, and it does not care how many weddings you booked. Then insurance, which is heavy, because you are hosting big crowds, alcohol, and dancing. Then staff, event coordinators, set up and tear down crews, and cleaners, which grows with every booking you take. Then the building itself, heating and cooling a huge space, landscaping that has to look perfect in every photo, constant repairs, and cleaning after every single event. Then marketing, because couples find you on the wedding platforms and through search, and those listings and ads cost real money every year. And notice the shape of it. Your costs are large, constant, and mostly fixed. The property, the insurance, the upkeep. Your revenue is lumpy, seasonal, and squeezed into a few prime dates. That gap between steady costs and bunched-up income is exactly where beautiful venues quietly go broke. The trap. Here is the trap, and it is dressed in fairy lights. People fall in love with the building. They see a stunning barn or a dreamy estate, and they think, if I make this beautiful enough, couples will come and the money will follow. So they pour everything into the property, and often borrow heavily to buy and renovate it, betting that beauty alone is the business. That is the first half of the trap. Beauty is not the business. By far the most common reason wedding venues fail is owners who believe a gorgeous space sells itself, and never build the actual business of pricing, filling, and marketing a calendar. A breathtaking venue with an empty Tuesday is still an empty Tuesday. Now the second half, and it is the killer. The debt. That beautiful building usually comes with a large mortgage, and that payment lands every month, all year, on an asset that only really earns on a few dozen days. You can have your Saturdays booked, your venue full of happy couples, and still be crushed, because the debt on the pretty building is bigger than the scarce calendar can carry. Put it together. You are carrying a giant, year-round fixed cost, often piled high with debt, on a business whose real inventory is a few dozen prime dates. Overpay for the beauty, lean on the loan, and the most romantic building in the county will still quietly take you under. To understand why this business even exists, look at how weddings themselves changed. For most of the last century, a wedding happened in one of three places: a church, your family's home, or a hotel ballroom. A dedicated wedding venue, a property that exists only to host other people's weddings, barely existed as an idea. Couples took what the church hall or the banquet room offered, and that was that. Then, in the early 2010s, everything shifted. A new generation of couples, armed with Pinterest boards and Instagram feeds, decided the hotel ballroom was boring. They wanted something unique, something rustic, something that photographed beautifully and felt personal. The barn wedding exploded. Suddenly, a plain farm building with good bones and a pretty field was worth a fortune on a Saturday. And farmers, landowners, and investors raced to convert barns, warehouses, and estates into dedicated venues. Read what that did to the money, because it created this entire business. A single day of demand, The photogenic wedding turned ordinary buildings into premium assets, but only for a handful of dates a year. The dedicated wedding venue was born from a change in taste, and it inherited that change's fatal flaw. The whole thing is built on being wanted intensely, on just a few days. The death spiral. So watch how a wedding venue dies, because it almost always follows the same script. An owner falls in love with a property and buys the dream. To afford the beautiful building and the renovation, they take on a heavy mortgage. Their plan is simple: book enough weddings to cover it. And for a while, on the strength of the pretty photos, the Saturdays do book. But the calendar is small, and the costs never sleep. The mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, and the upkeep run every month, while the weddings only land on prime dates in season. That owner, chasing bookings, never builds the weekday and off-season business that actually pays. So the empty Tuesdays stay empty. Now the market shifts, as it always does. The economy softens and couples cut their spending, or the trend moves towards smaller weddings and courthouse elopements, or a newer, prettier venue opens down the road and steals the season. Bookings thin, but the debt does not thin with them. To save money, the owner cuts staff and skips maintenance. The experience slips. A bad review lands on the wedding sites, and future couples quietly book elsewhere. The building is still beautiful, the mortgage is still due, and one soft season with the loan still hungry is all it takes to close the most photographed barn in the county. The beauty was never the problem. The empty calendar and the debt were the survivors. So who survives, and how? Venues still thriving did a few specific things right. 1. They filled the empty days. They treated the weekday and off-season calendar as the real prize, aggressively booking showers, birthdays, graduations, celebrations of life, and corporate events, so the building earned Monday through Thursday and all winter long, not just on prime Saturdays. 2. They did not drown in debt. Survivors bought or built within their means, kept the mortgage sane, and did not bet the whole business on beauty alone. A modest building with low debt beats a stunning one buried in a loan. 3. They stacked the high-margin extras: bar packages, decor rentals, in-house catering, and vendor commissions, layered on top of every booking, turned a simple rental into a rich one. 4. They ran it like a business, not a hobby. They priced their Saturdays to cover the whole year, tracked how many tours turned into bookings, and marketed relentlessly on the platforms where couples actually search. Once a venue reliably clears somewhere north of 25 weddings a year and fills the gaps around them, the math finally works. None of that is about the barn being pretty. It is about filling the calendar, controlling the debt, and selling the extras. The verdict: so does owning a wedding venue work. Let us run it, and treat this as a model, not a real venue. You buy a charming property, you keep the debt reasonable, and you protect your calendar from day one. In a good year, your prime Saturdays are booked out a year in advance at premium prices. Your weekdays are full of showers and corporate events, and every booking is stacked with bar packages and rentals. Because you filled the gaps and kept the loan sane, the building earns all week and all year, and the venue throws off seriously strong money. That is the good year. Now the other side. A recession hits and couples trim their guest lists and budgets. A gorgeous new venue opens one town over and takes a chunk of the season. Your Saturdays thin out. Your weekday events were never really built. And yet the mortgage, the insurance, and the taxes arrive every single month, exactly as before. Suddenly a business that looked like a fairy tale on a booked June Saturday is losing money in a quiet, expensive February. Here is the real verdict. A wedding venue is two bets at once. One is a bet on demand, that couples and companies keep wanting your space. The other is a bet on discipline, that you can fill the empty days, hold down the debt, and run a beautiful building like a cold business. Win both, and you own a property that prints money on Saturdays and profit on Tuesdays. Lose the discipline, over-borrow for the beauty, and the loveliest building in the county will bleed you dry between weddings. So the honest answer is this: a wedding venue can absolutely make very good money, but almost none of that money comes from just owning a beautiful place. It comes from filling a small, precious calendar, guarding against debt, and selling the extras. Do that, and it is a solid, real business. Buy the beauty, and hope the rest works itself out, and you have bought yourself the most expensive empty room in town. The thesis close. So look again at what you really bought. Not the fairy tale, not the first dance or the string lights or the tears during the vows or the champagne toast under the rafters. That is the magic, and the magic is only the bait. You bought an expensive building and a calendar with about 52 good boxes on it. You bought a mortgage that never sleeps, and a piece of real estate that only really earns on the days a stranger chooses to get married in it. And the whole business, the entire game, is filling those scarce dates, and the empty ones between them, for more than it costs to keep the doors open the rest of the time. A wedding venue owner is not really selling a place to get married. They are selling a handful of precious dates on a beautiful, mostly empty, mostly idle building, and racing to fill the gaps before the debt fills them first. Guard the calendar and respect the loan, and the good Saturdays are very good indeed. Forget that it was only ever worth about 52 days a year, and the prettiest building you ever bought will quietly take everything you have.